Hello and welcome to the Next 100 Days podcast. My name is Graham Arrowsmith.
And my name's Kevin Appleby. So, Graham, our guest today's got a fantastic offer for us.
Yes, he does. His name's Chris Davies, and he has a company that's called Graduate Coach. And if you've got children who have come through university and they really could do with a coach, it's going to cost you a fair bit. This is targeted at the affluent. And for anybody listening to this podcast today who is interested, you can actually get 10% discount. And all you have to do when you go onto their website is put NHD. So that's next 100 days. And that will get you a 10% discount from Graduate Coach for their coaching option. So with that in mind, I'd like to welcome Chris Davies.
Thanks very much, lads. Pleased to meet you today.
Well, Chris, you're the Graduate Coach, aren't you?
Yes. I created the whole genre 12 years ago. And when I was running an educational magazine company, we had a big call center with students, graduates, and resting actors on it, talking to parents on the phone, principally parents who had kids at primary school. And I went to one of the girls one day and I said, "Yeah, what do you want to do when you finish?" She said, I want to get into sales. I said, well, that's a great idea because everyone always wants to get into marketing, but nobody wants to get into sales. And she says, yeah, but the problem is, Chris, I haven't got any sales experience. I said, well, actually, do you know that you know now how to open a sale, close a sale, establish rapport, take a credit card from people, and you are a really good salesperson. Am I? Just what we did when we coached you and we taught you, we didn't taught you in jargon. We taught you to talk to these parents, usually mums, in natural English.
Yeah.
She said, blimey, could you write that all down for me? I said, have a look, give us your CV. I did her CV. And she says, blimey, if I'm doing all this, because she was going into a final year. Mm-hmm. I said, yes. You're going to walk into a job in sales because you've got real sales experience. A fortnight later, I've done 15 CVs. Now then, I had sold the company and I knew I would be fired because you always get fired once you've sold something. Right. So at the Christmas, of course, they fired me because they didn't want to pay the rest of the money owed, as they never do.
Yeah.
So I talked to these graduates and I said, hey, how come you guys don't get any help for jobs? And they said, no, we don't get any help. So I said, well, what happens if I help people get, CVs and this, that, and the other? They said, what a brilliant idea, Chris. Nobody is doing that. So £200,000 and 2 years later, I built a great big website and I'm trying to attract graduates to sign up for coaching services. And I'm having absolutely zero success. And it always goes to show, don't always believe what people tell you in market research. Mm-hmm. I am on my last legs. And I have decided to approach a company which is running at that point in time graduate exhibitions. And they've got a massive one at the NEC. And I say, listen, if you let me talk to all these graduates and things, I'll speak for you all weekend if we can have a free stand. And they said, yes. Imagine my surprise when us and all the rest on the stand at 11 a.m. on the Friday morning, doors are opening, graduates pour through the door, but pour through the door with their parents, right?
Right.
And then they're wandering around the stands and the parents are asking half the questions. I end up on the Army officer stand because I used to work on Army officer advertising. And I'm talking to some guy, the major, and some bloke comes up, obviously an ex-Army guy, and starts asking the guy on the stand, how can his son get into Sandhurst? Son doesn't say a word. Anyway, the colonel tells them, blah, 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 blah. They're both colonels. Anyway, the guy goes, I said, what's all that about then? And they said, oh, yeah, well, the kids don't know anything, so they use the parents. 93% of every person who came was accompanied by a parent.
Wow.
And then the penny dropped.
Mm.
A graduate never realizes they'll never get a job.
No.
They've always got a reason why there was somebody better, there was somebody else, blah, blah, blah. And I realized I'd spent 2 years chasing the wrong type of people. So then I orientated it towards parents. I started saying, hey, parents, you got a problem with your kid getting a job, let us help you. And then 8 years later, we got 150 five-star Google reviews. I've written 2 books. We guarantee jobs. We're really great at what we do.
Wow.
That's my story.
What is a fascinating part of that is that you spent, a couple of years sort of figuring, chasing the wrong market.
Entirely unsuccessful. And I am 45 years in the marketing business.
No, well, hey, please, we all make mistakes. Please don't take that to heart. But the beauty is that there was that moment at that exhibition when it dawned on you. I mean, you must have come across, it must have been a fantastic feeling almost.
Well, if you're a good lapsed Catholic, right, you will know about the Damascene conversion. When St. Paul goes to the person and the person says, blah, blah, blah. And it's called the Damascene conversion because Paul eventually realized everything he's done is wrong. And he turns into being a great guy, not being a tax collector and all the rest of it.
The blinding light on the road to Damascus. The blinding light on the road to Damascus.
Correct. And at 1 p.m. on the Friday, I'd realised that everything we'd done is wrong. But we stayed in one of the NEC hotels on the Friday night. And I was as happy as a sandboy because I said to everyone, we hadn't sold anything, right? There's all these kids wandering around. But eventually the parents are coming around. We're chatting to all the parents. And I said, are you not all depressed? He said, well, it's the end of the world. It's the end of the world. I said, no, it's not. Oh, listen, guys, everything we've been doing is wrong. But now we know who we can target, parents.
And presumably, I've had 3 going through university and helped them all with their costs and so forth. So I was kind of invested in it, just like many of the parents I'm sure that you deal with are. And for them not to be in a position at the end of it was a scary prospect. And it's not something you really want to do because you're basically lining up. It's almost like you've failed yourself, and you're not. And the kids haven't failed particularly, but you'd feel really let down. You won't want to show that to the children. But at the end of the day, how do you get that dialogue with parents to make them want to work with you?
70% of the parents are coming through on a recommendation from another parent.
Right.
30% are coming in via the website, which is all SEO optimized.
Yeah.
And we deal with parents every day who are a mixture of angry, bemused, irritated, desperate. I mean, what is lovely, and I am a parent myself, and I tried to help my daughter. I mean, I helped her get a job, but after a period of unemployment, and she wouldn't come and see me at first. Eventually she did, but a parent will stop at nothing to help their kids.
That's true.
And it is so beautiful to be able to, listen, how do you feel? How do you think I feel? I am now just 71 years old a week ago. And this is the single best job I've ever, ever, ever had. Because I transform lives. I transform parents' lives, kids' lives. I spent 50 years flogging booze, insurance, banking, ads, and all the rest of it. But this is a great job. In fact, it's not a job, really.
Vocation.
Yeah.
Chris, I can really, really get that. And I've spent a career doing consultancy projects, putting together business cases, doing change projects for government. I can think of many projects that really they got nowhere. For some reason, they got cancelled. They run out of funding. They lost direction in the middle. But when you're doing something that changes a person, it's much, much different. And I'm like you. I much prefer what I'm doing at the moment because it's targeting individuals and getting individuals to where they want to be career-wise. And okay, I'm further down the road than you. I'm largely looking at folk that have already qualified as accountants and they're looking to get to the top job, or they've got the top job already and they haven't quite got the right skills for it. But it's very, very satisfying when you're directing people in that right direction. You're making a real difference to an individual.
Well, isn't it? I mean, listen, isn't it great being able to help somebody? It's fantastic.
Yeah. You obviously you've got 2 books, and you've been kind enough to share them. And one of the books is called The Student Book, and another book is called The Graduate Book. There's a sort of chronology going on there. So basically, I'm a student, presumably, but I'm also a graduate. Is that the purpose? Is that you the books are aimed at people at different stages?
Well, it's interesting. I wanted to write the graduate book, and I wrote the graduate book first. The graduate book is the story of my success through incredible failure to running my own advertising agency at 28, selling it at 35 for a couple of mil, and all the things I learned along the way, and how I could have become much more successful much more quickly if I'd had a mentor, right?
Yeah.
And that was the book that I always had inside me. Not that I can write, I'm dyslexic. I have a lot of help to write it.
Yeah.
However, I created it, and then I realised that actually, hey, well, that's great. And I don't think it's ever going to sell many copies, but everyone who gets a job, I give a copy to, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And there isn't a book like it out there.
No.
And there's lots of other reading, and I quote and I reference a million people in TED Talks. The student book is the book that you should read when you get to uni. And it's because it's the guide, that's the handbook to getting a great job afterwards.
Yeah.
Now, however, of course, we live in a post-literate world. And in the middle of when lockdown started, a company called Future Learn, who runs online courses worldwide for unis and other people, came to us and said, yeah, it's really bad, lockdown, COVID and everything. Would you create a course for us which is helping graduates across the world to get a job? And I said, sure. So the student book is now an online course, and 6,000 grads from all around the world have taken it.
Oh, wow. 6,000? I mean,
yes.
So that's...
So if anyone comes to us and they've got no money, and quite a few have, I never turn anyone away. I say, well, listen, these are all the paid for things, but listen, if you want a complete guide to how to get a graduate job, go in there. It's called How to Get a Graduate Job. You click through from our site and boom, you're in. Boom. Yeah. And it's me talking to graduates and helping them and showing them how to get jobs.
But it's quite a revelation, isn't it? Being having a coach, probably age 21, 22, and they've perhaps been through university and they've been surrounded by some really bright lecturers, I'm sure, and maybe one of the lecturers might be their particular student. I don't know what they would call them, but somebody who's going to guide them through. But there's no real place in universities that I'm aware of where they basically say, right, come on over here, we're going to show you how to get you the job of your dreams. It's just doesn't appear to be.
Well, no, because universities, as you and I both know, are just government-sponsored exam factories now.
Who are very, very willing to take your money, and at the end of the day, willing. Yeah, and you know, and we're probably cheap compared to America and other places. But that said, there's a shed, because I know I paid it. There's a shed load of money that I paid, and it's even more now. So I sort of, I don't, if you're listening to this and you're still paying, then, got my sympathies, but there is another side to this. And I guess with your help, Chris, if you can get somebody into a graduate type job, the kind of job that they were doing the university degree for, or they had at least in their mind that they could rise to that, then the sooner they're in that, then, they're off to the races, aren't they? They earn.
Well, of course, and here's some horrible facts, right? 46% of UK grads never ever get a graduate job.
Yeah.
93% of international grads never get a job in the UK. Average time for those people who do get a job is 18 months after graduation.
Wow.
Right? So you come out, you're either 60 grand or 600 grand in debt, right? And you've got a degree, right? Let me ask you a question, both of you, right? Now let us think of the academic syllabus, right?
Right.
Those history degrees and all the rest of it. When was that syllabus set down, and why was it set down?
Well, that's a good question. You mean for things like history or even business studies?
Yeah, the modern university.
The modern university. Okay, I don't know. I'm going to take
long while for those traditional academic subjects.
Go on.
I guess
name a date.
I would say about mid 70s. I would guess something like that.
No, I don't think it's changed significantly. It's probably the turn of the 1900s.
Maybe
1880.
Yeah.
Oh, crikey! Right. Okay. Fair enough.
Why was the university system? Why were the Oxford colleges expanded from the 1850s onwards, and then eventually London University came around? Why was that?
I guess there was an expansion of wealthy people.
Yeah, but actually,
you're at the end of the Industrial Revolution. You've invented a fairly large middle class. The professions are all emerging, and you're looking. Degrees back then were primarily to get you into those kind of accountants, legal. Doctor.
No, none of those were degrees. None of those were degree places. No. The modern university system started the expansion of the Oxford and Cambridge colleges, and then subsequently the beginning of London Uni, but essentially was designed to provide a graduate class for the Indian and African foreign diplomatic services.
All right.
Right.
Interesting. Right. Okay. That is interesting.
So we have a perfectly formed Victorian educational system, which is absolutely, completely correct for life in the 20th.
Yeah, but it's an interesting, historical perspective. But where we are now, the more worrying thing is that, like you say, less than half of, about half of graduates don't ever get a graduate level job.
Of course.
I mean,
we've got our friend Tony Blair to thank for that, haven't we? Up until 1990, every graduate got a job. There was no graduate unemployment. Then Tony Blair says it's all about education, doubled the number of uni places, and then eventually now since then tripled them. But the number of graduate jobs has not increased.
Right.
I looked on the Unilever website just the other day, and the number of graduates that Unilever and Procter's take on is no more than they were in the 1970s. Now, every lawyer, policeman, there's lots of graduate, and there's even graduate nurses now, of course.
Yeah, of course.
But essentially, there are 300,000 graduate jobs every year now that COVID's recovered. But there are 800,000 graduating every year. Now people can apply from around the world. And of course, you've always got a hangover of a mil or 2 mil. So at this moment in time, there's going to be 30,000 jobs advertised this month. And there are 2.3 million people applying for those jobs.
Wow.
And 93% of those CVs will never be seen because they are not ATS compliant, applicant tracker system software compliant.
You'll have to explain that, Chris.
Right. Right. Why do graduates never get interviewed? Well, apart from the fact that their CVs are useless, every large and medium-sized organization now has software that sees the CV and scans the CV first.
Right.
If it's not compliant, it's an automatic reject.
Yeah.
93% of graduate CVs are automatically rejected. And funnily enough, yet another thing that neither graduates nor careers people inside unis know is about ATS systems.
Just remind us again, ATS stands for automatic
applicant tracking system software.
So this who invented or who designed or who made this?
Well, we've got our friends the Americans to thank for it.
Right. So not universities, presumably businesses have actually got this because they get a huge number of applicants for jobs. So they wanted a way to sort of, because I've heard in the past that people have just got a big pile of CVs on their desk, and they'll take the top part and use that, and the bottom part they'll just throw in the bin. So effectively, because the science of finding the right
paper
people
now.
No, but I mean, it's the same sort of logic.
Let's take a big bank. Let's take JP Morgan.
Yeah.
Right. So JP Morgan last year had 68,000 applications for its graduate scheme.
Right.
They hire 120 graduates every year. Of that 120, what they don't tell the people applying for the graduate jobs is roughly 90 of the 120 jobs will go to those people who have interned for them.
I see. Okay.
And all the blue chips now hire mainly from interning. So you're talking about 30 people applying for 66,000 jobs. Of those 30 open positions, 15 are kept aside for the sons and daughters of those parents who are running multinational companies and giving JP Morgan 10, 15, 20, 100, 200 mil a year, right? Yeah. And the other one for actual graduates with 84 degrees, and we're doing Excel spreadsheets at the age of 5. So virtually impossible. Now, and it ain't any different in any of the other big blue chip companies.
Right. You're painting a really, really depressing story for parents of students, because frankly, the odds are set against them. So, so far against them that even if they put a CV together, it's going to get rejected by the likes of JP Morgan. Even if they put an ATS CV together, it's going to get rejected by JP Morgan because they've got the people who stuff them with money, and they've got their interns and God knows what. So actually, don't bother applying to JP Morgan or other big companies. So how is it you can actually help people get across the line then?
Because we have a 6-stage process that we've been developing for 10 years that works every time. And I mean, also principally amongst that, of the 300,000 graduate jobs, there's only 25,000 in those big firms. So there's 275,000 in small and medium-sized enterprises. Right. And we offer an internship. So they've got work experience, lots of jobs are in the digital area. That's where our internship program. And it remains the case that if you are, 1, reasonably bright, B, want to get a graduate job, C, with some tutelage and help, know what type of graduate job you might be suitable for, right? Mm-hmm. And there are 2,500 graduate jobs, but there are only 3 types of graduate job. 10% of graduates get jobs directly related to this course. Basically, anything medical, anything IT, you walk into a job. All the history grads, the engineers, and all the rest of it, they can't get a job related to their course unless they want to be a teacher. However, looking at the types of graduate jobs that exist for those people, essentially there's only two types of job. There's 2,500 jobs, but there's only two types. One, we call knowledge architects, people hired for their ability to slice and dice data. It might be numbers, it's usually numbers, but not exclusively so, where they are creating insights from raw data. So they're finance people, they're supply chain people, they're market research people, and so on and so forth. Right?
Yeah. Okay.
And the latter type are communicators, and they are people who can run teams and so on and so forth, deal with clients, internal and external. I happen to do a science degree.
Yeah.
I was good with numbers, but I'm principally a communicator. So in my advertising agency days, which was the first 20 years of my working life, I would deal with the creatives, the specialists. I would deal with all the researchers, the media researchers, the consumer researchers.
Yeah.
I would create the output of the advertising agency in terms of the ads, and I would sell the ads to the clients. And I would not be a patsy either, because the clients, in actual fact, don't want a dog and bark themselves. They want somebody who can make a contribution. So I can understand data, so I could argue the toss with clients, right? But I was good with clients. So I was a communicator.
Right. So, okay. So one or the other, if you both, then you've got twice the number of opportunities, presumably.
Correct.
So you actually can detect that from people. But did I hear you say earlier, Chris, that graduate engineers find it difficult to get a job?
Graduate engineers find it virtually impossible to get an engineering job.
Wow. That's
and
what I wouldn't have
Why is that?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that doesn't seem logical.
Think about it. We don't make anything in Britain.
Okay.
That's true. We design a lot of stuff, but we don't make anything.
But there's a lot of SMEs that do. I mean,
but they don't take. Come on, how many SME graduate engineering companies are there take a graduate? How many graduate engineers are there every year? Absolutely thousands, in the tens of thousands, right?
Got you.
And they aren't the jobs for them. And it is a beautiful university and school inspired scam.
Yeah.
Like, do a STEM degree, you walk into a job. It's all bullshit.
Yeah. Do you know what? That's really scary, because I would have thought most parents wouldn't have got that. Well, when you point out the bleeding obvious that there's not enough there's not enough businesses out there producing engineering businesses, then I kind of get that. But it's difficult to see the connection there. So basically, going into engineering, you'd think you'd have a really good chance. Obviously not. I mean, if it's on a par with history. Oh boy.
Now, I've been deliberately fairly quiet here and listening to say. I'm finding this fascinating, Chris, because if I go back to a former life, I used to run one of the graduate schemes in PwC.
Oh yes, yeah.
And I can reflect on exactly what you were saying about two types of graduate jobs, because we probably have two types of jobs within PwC's management consulting business. We had the techies, who you would be bringing on to be probably deep experts in something like SAP or
yeah.
And then you had people that you would use on client assignments to do project work on client sites and so on. Now, you probably, because the scheme that I was running was one of the accountancy schemes. Everybody on my scheme was going for a CIMA qualification.
Yeah.
But the principal thing that you were thinking about is, okay, can I take this person on site, put them in front of a client, and they can have a sensible conversation as well as
absolutely
right.
I mean, I get loads of people into accountancy jobs, and on the management consulting side and on the audit side, right? And I say to all the audit ones, I said, when you get up to, and there's still for the most part in many firms, the final interview is with a partner or somebody just below partner. And if they got that far, and I say, now, you know what this conversation is going to be about? It's going to be about anything other than accountancy. Now, why did that guy become a partner? Right? And they go, oh, I don't know, because he can really good. And I said, no. He's a salesman, right? If you think about it, the top 4 firms, there is absolutely no difference between everything they do. They all do the same things for the same people at the same price. Now, the determinant by the client, be they public or private sector, as to whom they're going to appoint, is entirely on that basis made on who they get on well with. So at the final interview, the partner is looking at you and he's thinking, when he's going out, because they're still going out on the audit trails up into the metal bashers in Birmingham, will the lads in the accounts department want to take him out for a drink? Can he talk to people? Can he do this? Can he do that? And all the PwC partners that I used to do, they were always into rugby. So I'd say, before you go in and do that, are you into English rugby? No, well, you better be, because that's what you're going to get asked about.
Yeah. And that just echoes on life once you join one of those organisations. Not very long ago, I was doing an assignment as an independent consultant, subcontracting with PwC. Actually out in Saudi Arabia. And the main client contact that we had, expat, if you wanted to do any work with him, be prepared to spend 45 minutes talking about Manchester United.
Yeah, exactly.
Not anywhere. Yeah,
it was about 3 years ago, because it's coming up to one's birthday, and my colleague at the time, Veronica Nishtik, she basically is now an associate at PwC, and I would say that Veronica's very, very. She's bright as a button, but also she's just got a lift now to a senior associate, and basically I suspect it's because that she can communicate. Albeit being a Pole, she can communicate really well. She gets on with people. And that's kind of important, I would imagine. I know she's got a lot of clients. So what's really coming across is she can do the work, the maths of it, but she can get on with folk.
Yeah. And it's called emotional intelligence.
Emotional intelligence. Absolutely so. I mean, one of the questions I wanted to ask you is that, these parents, first of all, this series that Kevin and I have been doing is doing business with the affluent. And I know that one of the things that you're looking at is because presumably to afford your fees, they've got to be reasonably well. And so that's a natural home for your market now. What is it that you would say to these people, to persuade them to work with you about little Johnny or Jemina?
If I was being blunt, and I'm usually not that blunt when I'm talking to them in the first instance, you've spent all this money and you haven't got a return. So you're going to need to spend some more, because if I like little Johnny and I think he's capable of getting a job, I'll put my money where my mouth is and I'll get that job. And he'll be on 50, 60 grand a year after 2 years. And I'll mentor him throughout.
And you will find in Johnny some of the things that that person 2 years out needs to be. So you'll get him there. That's really special. Just tell us a little bit, Chris, about what those things typically are.
About how they're going to get a job?
Well, what you're saying is, today I'm putting my money I'm taking on Johnny as a client, but in 2 years' time or so, I'm going to get him into a job that's going to be paying him 50, 60,000 quid a year. So what is it that Johnny has now that you see in Johnny and then you have to typically get it coached into him that gets him into that particular position in 2 years' time?
Okay. Well, in the first instance is to get the job in the first instance, a job, right?
Yeah.
To start learning and earning, right?
Yeah.
You don't need to work for a blue chip first time round, right? Mm-hmm. Just get in, get learning, get earning, get a transformed CV.
Yeah.
To that and for that, you must firstly dig into yourself. Women are much better at this than men.
Yeah.
Because they're having to be self-reflective as to really what what type of person are they? Are they that second or third? Now, and they can't usually answer that, but I can, and I do not use a lot of psychological profiling at all, but I ask a series of very simple, seemingly simple questions, principally around what did they most enjoy about their time at university and their course, right? Now, that every grad can be articulate about, and you will get a few at one end who will say, I love managing the sports team, the cricket team, doing all the social events.
Wow, get that on your CV fast.
Yeah, correct. And then at the other end, when you're dealing with somebody whose a brain, be it a maths brain or a verbal written brain, is they will come up with, within a quarter of an hour or 2 hours or 2 days later, and they'll say, you know what, I really enjoyed X. Let me give you some quick examples. There was a guy who'd done a master's, done his first degree at Nottingham, did his master's, arts degree, history. And for his master's degree, he did a study of why Oxford had changed to the Cromwellians from previously being with Charles I. The chap who was who was doing the thesis for him, who under his auspices, was a senior lecturer at Nottingham who was doing a lot of work, primary research on the English Civil War. And he said, listen, mate, go and have a look, because it's always fascinated me why Oxford suddenly changed from being royalist. But when Cromwell's mates, army turned up, the city opened the door, right? And then blow me down up in the parish registers and all the other stuff. Fantastic what you can get in English history. He discovered that in the Cromwell-run areas, the widows were being given pensions, and that was not happening in the royalist areas. So guess what? They did the modern equivalent of a leaflet drop, right? And they said, when we're coming in, lads, don't be afraid of us, because if you've lost a loved one, we're going to look after you. Now, that is absolute prime research, and that's deep, deep, deep diving. Let me give you another example. A lad who'd done ancient history at Durham had to do his thesis, and he was looking at a Greek who was a minor guy around the time of either Aristotle or Plato. Mm-hmm. And his lecturer said, do you know nobody's written about this guy since the 1930s? Why don't you go and have a look at this guy and find out what you can about him? And of course, great. His work is still around in the original Greek, but he gets it translated and all the rest of it. Now then, the guy gets it first because he discovered that this kind of minor kind of guy who was out there blogging away in the Athenian equivalent had in actual fact been writing fake news. He'd been actually telling the Athenians that something was happening.
An original Donald Trump fake news. Fantastic.
And in 675 BC, he wrote about this guy and it was all on fake news.
Well, yeah. Does it really surprise any of us that people tell lies? Okay. So,
and I'll give you the maths one. I'll give you the last one, the maths one. So there's the maths and stat grad from Newcastle. And I'm from Newcastle, so I know. They've got big connections with the RVI and the Freeman Hospital, the University Medical School.
Right.
So COVID is raging, and the maths, the stato guys inside the maths department are asked by the clinicians at the RVI and the Freeman to run some deep dive data, 60,000 database, anonymized data, because they're trying to find right early propensities for death from COVID, and nobody's got any hard data, right? Department of Health have got no hard data. So they are all they are given is completely anonymized data. But this girl proves there is a correlation, very clear correlation with excess weight and COVID death.
All right.
And that is before any of the NHS central data comes out.
Right.
And there are people who are clinically or morbidly obese, and why are they much more likely to die with COVID? Because when you are obese, and the more obese you are, the worse you are, your immune system is in a state of constant inflammation. So COVID gets you, and you don't have the ability to respond. So what happened is they worked. There was a team of 5 of them worked on this 24/7 for 4 days, crunched it, provided it, and they got it out into the frontline doctors for saying, listen, these guys who are coming in, guys and women, you've got to be especially careful. These guys have got to get on the ventilators straight away, and so on and so on and so forth. Now,
makes sense. Wow. I mean, so okay. Okay. If I follow you right, that was kind of research that these people who are coming to you have done. So getting a job after that
they had done, but in not one instance over the last 12 years has that graduate realized that could be of enormous importance in their ability to get a job.
Oh, wow.
And I'm thinking back there to my time again at PwC. And another of the graduate schemes that we had brought analysts into an area that we used to call business dynamics.
Mm-hmm.
There used to be some fantastic interview questions in the business dynamics list. And one of them, you just get asked at random in the interview, how many maternity beds does the UK need? And you weren't necessarily expected to produce the right answer, but you needed to demonstrate that you had the right sort of brain that would say, okay, there are 60 million people in the UK. Death rate is roughly equal to birth rate. Average lifespan is about 80. Therefore, here is roughly the birth rate for that number of population, a couple of days in hospital for each mum. Therefore, that's the number of beds.
Correct.
Show that sort of logic in interview. And there are some other ones that I'm still trying to work out how on earth you're supposed to put the logic.
Well, because when you were at PwC, Kelly, when you were at PwC, the population of this country is about 42 million. So, I mean, your math is already out. But
it's about 56 million.
All right, fair enough then. It's grown quite a bit. But seriously, you are one of the only coaches for this particular market. You are pitched at your fees are not they're reasonable fees, and you don't have to go into that right now. But the point is, you have to put up a bit of money to get your services. But I guess getting that money back from the parents' point of view is it is a bit of an additional investment, but it's an investment they should have always planned to have made. So is there some logic in you getting to these people earlier still?
No, because sadly, unless it's the second or third son or daughter, right?
Yeah, okay.
Right, because the thing is, the parent, right. So I talked to a parent last week, And they said, can you help, blah, blah, blah. And I said, yes, explain the process. Well, my son did industrial economics at Nottingham. And we went up on the open day, and the lecturer said, all the companies will come round and they'll choose all the people in industrial economics from Nottingham. There's millions of people. And of course, he believed what the lecturer said. Nobody turned up on the campus and he ain't got a job. And the parent, and I said, how much is it going to cost? I said, well, first thing is you need a really good CV and types of jobs. And how much is that? £1,000. And I said, oh, I can't. He said, I can't afford that. I said, well, listen, have the free course. But, you've got to realize that you've been scammed.
Yeah.
Now, the really sad thing is, and now here, interestingly, the parents that I talk to and work with are nowadays very usually getting executive coaching.
Right. That's interesting.
But the concept that their son or daughter might need it, and the concept that the son or daughter accept that they might need it, is a wholly new one. But as Bill Gates said, every person needs a coach, be they footballer, ballerina, or even a graduate.
And actually, your point is well made for parents, because at the end of the day, nothing will bring them joy than their child doing something that they want to do, but basically they're then launched. I mean, at the end, there's that film, isn't there? Some that we've probably all seen about getting failure to launch. Nothing feels better than your children. They're on their way.
Oh, fantastic!
And at the end of the day, bank of mum and dad. It's not getting drained as much.
Right. I'm now filling your heads full of facts. Here's some more facts. Right. Of course, all the parents that I'm talking to, none of the kids have signed on the dole, have they? Right.
Oh, no.
So they're all being paid £1,500 a month from the bank of mum and dad, or even more if they're paying for them to live in a flat in London.
Yeah.
And £1,000 a month for the flat and £1,000 a month in their back pocket.
Yeah.
So actually, we're cheap as chips. Plus, here's the good news bit starting, right? So no graduates hired during COVID. So suddenly, graduate gets job, right? And by the way, graduate has now got job, because in the beginning, when graduate says open for work on LinkedIn doesn't hates graduates. So the algorithm ignores that thing, open to work, and nobody ever looks at it. And the Microsoft hate it, right? Microsoft hate grads, right? But anyway, now you've got a job, right? And after only 6 months, there's a perfect storm of recruiters saying, hey, come and work for us, come and work for us. Yeah. And the average salary, which is absolutely bloody ludicrous, the average salary 15 to 18 months after getting that first graduate job, regardless of job, is a quite staggering £53,000 a year.
Wow. Yeah. So work gets work. So the important thing is that sort of mindset, or the change between a status of no work, no hope, and along comes a bit of an intervention, work and plenty of hope. So effectively, you're changing the status for lots of families. But to get on board with you, what would they initially do, Chris? They would probably go to your website, which that might be that one of the first things they would do, and that's graduatecoach.co.uk. Are there other ways in which they can get in touch with you?
Yeah, I mean, on the website, there's ways they can then talk to us. They write forms to us saying, hey, we've got these issues. And then I'll talk to them. I'll get them to explain the problem. I'll say, well, listen. And we'll send them documents and we'll say, listen, well, we can probably help your son or daughter. Yeah. Let's have a look at them. Come in. Not going to cost you or them anything, right?
Okay.
And then blah, 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 we'll take it from there. Now, if they say, oh, that's really good, but like the dad last week, I ain't got any money. I said, well, listen, look, thanks very much for contacting us. Now, listen, there are no jobs in industrial economics, as you know and I know, right? Oh, yes, I realise that now, right? Well, go and do the free course, right? It's got everything. Types of jobs are suitable for, how to create a great CV, applicant tracker systems. I never turn anyone away.
Right.
Everyone always gets help.
Okay. So this is it's like an opportunity, I think, for parents of graduates, and we're recording this towards the end of July, and probably on LinkedIn and those places that you frequent socially. Or at business, you've probably seen lots of pictures of people in gowns and celebrating their hard-earned degrees. But what's interesting is that the next bit, it's okay, I've had a bit of fun on the beach. Now what am I going to do? So the next few months, I guess, for some of these people, for the bank of mum and dad, they'll be twitchy.
Oh yes, and I mean, I was going to say earlier today. At Westminster Cathedral, just down the road from our office.
Yeah.
Westminster Cathedral all this week has been running graduate ceremonies, right?
Yep.
And I was looking at the body language of the grads. Now, actually, unlike my day, every single grad was wearing the mortarboard, right? And every single grad was fully upped and dressed and all the rest of it. And they were really, really happy and proud to be graduating. And I said to the two lads from work, the three of us, right, I said, look at the body language of these people and their parents. This is a completely happy day. And I said, it's going to be so sad when they've done CV number 25 and no one's ever replied to them.
And that's where you come in. I mean, it's actually, isn't that, it's the classic sort of Dan Kennedy thing, isn't it? It's the kind of problem that at the moment they don't perhaps perceive the problem. It'd be interesting if you could actually look into the eyes of the parents on day 2 or 3 after the graduation, and basically say, well, how's it going? And they're then thinking, all right, okay, and then you've, like you say, application number 25, number 50, whatever it's going to take. If you're doing that, it's every single extra one that you're trying to do is destroying your confidence.
Correct.
But you're doing it the same way.
Correct. Getting
the same result. It's a definition of insanity.
Yeah.
How about this? How about the saddest story? The engineer who came to us after having written 156 applications to be given 2 interviews.
Yeah.
156. I mean,
it's soul destroying, and I despair for kids. Having said that, we all had to go and find our way. You've got something about what you've used the talents that you've got, and you've honed, and you, like you say, you really enjoy this job more than almost any other job you've had. But you're putting that to work for people to actually help them, or give them a distinct advantage, and actually you're giving them a guarantee as well.
Yes,
that's different.
It's unique.
Yeah,
it's our USP.
Yeah,
the sad thing in all of this, Chris, is that you're dealing with that engineer, that industrial economist, probably after the 50 or 60 applications have gone in. It would be much nicer if you were talking to them maybe a year before they actually graduate.
Oh, of course. But and it never ceases to amaze me how naive I can be. I've just done a series of workshops for 60 international students or graduates, right? And I get 4 hours, and I was being paid by a company. I get 4 hours with me and 2 guys from work talking to them. And all their CVs are crap. They're rubbish. And intellectually, the words are going in, right? But they, at the end of the day, and I got some nice 5-star reviews, and of course I had everybody's emails and everything. Nobody's given me any business because they're paying 20 grand a year for the privilege of coming to UCL and Imperial and all the rest of it. And by golly, that's a British university, and they're bound to get a job in Britain afterwards.
Oh, so no, they're not.
They can't. It's really interesting. It's like in the olden days when I was in advertising, I never worked on the Pepsi or Coke account, right? But, you know, Pepsi always tasted in blind taste tests nicer than Coke. But as soon as you put the brand name on there, people would buy Coke. I worked on Persil in the early days against when Ariel came out, and Ariel did wash whiter than Persil because it had enzymes. But we were running ads at JWT saying dirt is good and all the rest of it. And people say, oh, no, I'm still buying Persil. You know, so you cannot rationally, until a person is ready, you cannot convince them. Now, sorry to divert again, I am a great student of Churchill, right? I have read 1 million books about him. I have studied them. I was watching something by Sir Martin Gilbert, who was his official biographer, wrote 56 books on him. I was aware, and of course I've seen the films, Churchill standing up in the House of Commons saying, they've got so many aircraft and we've got we're so few, blah, 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 blah. In this particular speech that he gave to an American college, he named 9 separate incidents between 1934 and 1939 where he stood up with data given to him by service chiefs and intelligence chiefs. And at no point in any of those 9 interventions did any single member of the government say this data is wrong. But neither the Labour nor the Tory side accepted what Churchill said. And it needed the almost extinction of the British Isles before Churchill's words were accepted.
You might be fighting a losing battle on that. I mean, there might be something you just have to accept. But over time, some of those statistics that you started this podcast with are still there. And like you said, I think, didn't you say 93% of foreign-born or foreign graduates don't get a job in the UK? So, yeah. You know, the odds are against. That's a bit like Newcastle's chances of winning the Premier League this next year. Or odds against.
You're absolutely right, Graham, because, you know, I think the best we're going to do next season 7th.
No, correct.
The thing about it is that
like Leeds United, who will be in another relegation battle.
Well, maybe not. Who knows? But the point is, it's going to be very, very difficult for anybody to get to. They've got to be able to do something different to get a different result, and you're the difference. You've got a unique offer. You've got a huge amount of talent and experience to impart to their kids. So, you know, what I would say is, as a parent of graduates, a parent of 3 graduates, I would say to you, if you're listening to this, and make a beeline for the graduate coach, who's Chris Davies. And Chris, you've been a brilliant guest on the Next 100 Days podcast.
Well, Graham, that was a fantastic session with Chris, and there was some great takeaways there. But just before we go any further, I just think it's worth reminding people that if that spoke to you, if you're in that situation of being a parent with a graduate who is desperately looking for a job and is about to send off that 56th CV off somewhere without success, well, use the code on Chris's website, NHD, to get 10% off some coaching. Because as Chris said, he's going to get a result for you. But
you really want your children to get that first proper job, and Chris is going to get them there. So, take advantage of it. It's one of the benefits of having a podcast. People do give us opportunities to save for our listeners. So take advantage of that. NHD, go to Graduate Coach and look for their coaching option.
But, Graham, there was a big lesson there today. And that big lesson was, if you're sending off the 56th CV and you do the same with the 57th, expect the same results.
Yeah.
And there was Chris standing in that great big gathering, with the students coming in. He was pitching to students. He'd been pitching to students for 2 years. Okay. He had a great marketing background, and he'd fallen for doing the same thing over and over again that wasn't working. There's a light bulb moment that he had to do something different, pitch to parents. So I think there's a big, big lesson in this podcast. Don't keep doing the same thing over and over again and expect different results.
Well, that's a definite lesson for today's podcast, in which I've been Graham Arrowsmith.
I've been Kevin Appleby. Goodbye.
Goodbye.